Well, as the Isle of Man lockdown comes to an end and gets much publicity all over the place, there are still issues that are outstanding. And Caroline's joining us right now. She's got a group that's formed. It's about keeping in touch with your children, especially obviously with parents are separated and they may be living in the UK. It's certainly been an issue. I know you've been in touch with ministers, but can you take us back and tell us a bit more exactly about your situation?
Okay, yeah. So I think it was November, I got in touch with the Council of Ministers because they, at that point, had changed the rules around quarantining together in a household, which meant that in our household, we couldn't manage to facilitate any contact for my daughter with her father who lives in the UK, because that would mean both me and my husband being in quarantine and obviously the ongoing impact of that on our finances. So I wrote to them just to say, look, that was the last kind of glimmer of hope that we had, that we were able to quarantine together and my husband could carry on going out to work. So anyway, Dr. Allinson replied very promptly, and he set up a meeting with ourselves. There was two other members of the Parents Across the Water group who met with him and somebody from Border Control. And there was a lot of discussion around chaperoning children, because at that point, say using my example, my daughter's dad would not have been able to drop my daughter back because the boats won't allow you weren't allowed to stay on the boat to and then return again. That wasn't allowed. I couldn't travel over and drop her off because then I would have to quarantine for 2 weeks anyway, even if I hadn't got off the boat. And Loganair, well, none of the airlines now do unaccompanied minors. So there was no way to transport our children to the UK, even if we wanted to, without having to quarantine. So they were going to go away and look at, could we talk to Loganair about doing unaccompanied minors? Could we talk to the steam packet? Nothing came back from that. And here we are. Obviously, Christmas happened. So I did send my daughter with a colleague who just happened to be going on the boat. And then I went over to get her and then quarantined for 2 weeks with my son, who's nearly 2. So that was fun. Fortunately for me, my friend had an empty property which I could stay in. That's now not an option. The government have obviously retracted the offer of funding accommodation for isolating in. And now obviously they've brought in that 3 tests are necessary. So that's for me and my baby son to travel, and my daughter, that would be £450 worth of tests for COVID, plus obviously the cost of isolating somewhere away from home. Excuse me, and also the loss of earnings and the cost of the travel. So we're talking about, upwards of £4,000 altogether if you include loss of earnings in that.
Wow, I mean, £4,000, that certainly adds up, doesn't it?
Yeah, so I mean, the test themselves is £450 for 3 people. So, a loss of earnings for 2 weeks, a couple of £1,000 for accommodation. You can't get anywhere for less than £500 a week to isolate. And obviously the cost of going on the boat, so like £300.
I mean, it's good that you got your meeting, but obviously nothing's happened, which is obviously something you need to keep on top of here. But how many people are in your group?
There's a relatively small number that are in the group, so I can only assume there's a very small number of people on the island this would apply to, so 20 odd. However, if you think about that, why can't they then just allow some sort of lenience? It's not huge swathes of people. It is some children who need to see their parents in the UK, or, parents that need to travel. There's one lady who's got 2 children with additional needs. They haven't seen their father for a year because he used to travel over here to come and see them for a day because the travel's too much for them to manage. He obviously isn't allowed to come and see them. Then we've got a girl who's gone to live with her father because she can't cope with not seeing him. So she's missing out on her secondary education over here. Her mental health was so badly affected that she tried to take her own life. So there's huge difficulties. I mean, certainly in my own situation, I can't say to my daughter when she can see her dad again. And it's not just her dad. She's got a little brother there. She's got, a whole life there that she's not allowed to be part of. And and so it's really impacting on her. We're not the only ones. There's got more.
So as you said, you've written to the Chief Minister.
Well, yeah, as I said, the only response I got was from Dr. Allinson.
Oh, so you didn't get anything from the Chief Minister back?
Nothing, no.
But obviously the borders are going to be relaxed at some point in the future. But in the meantime, are you looking for some sort of exemption?
I think what would be handy would be to waive the cost of the tests, because they might say, "Oh, we'll do the 3-week quarantine then," and it's like, well, with a 2-year-old. And also my daughter's missing school, and also loss of earnings because I'm self-employed. That's not an option. So I think reducing or waiving the cost of the test would be helpful, and also, allowing us to share our household with my husband, or subsidising accommodation so that we can quarantine and keep everybody safe, because obviously that's the better option than quarantining with my husband, in terms of risk of transmission, etc. So,
this is all coming back to the risk factor, and I think we're all much more conscious of it since the last lockdown.
Yeah, absolutely. But there has to be a point where people realise that the cure is worse than the disease. The impact for these children long term is huge. I mean, they are not seeing their fathers, or in some cases their mothers. We're in touch with a mum whose children are in the UK, and she hasn't seen her daughter for, a very long time. Another lady who's contacted me this morning says, her husband went to work in the UK before the March lockdown last year. And they've now separated because they haven't managed to see each other. Her son hasn't seen his dad. This has got much longer term ramifications than first expected, I think. The impact on mental health, the impact on, finance for people, the impact on, services going forward for children that have lost relationships with parents is huge. I mean, I work in the field, I'm a social worker, so I work in the field of understanding the impact on children of having absent parents, of, having children with, emotional difficulties. And the cost impact of that is ongoing and huge, for services for the Isle of Man. So there needs to be some sort of balancing here. Is it better to help us at this point than fund the support these children might need going forward? It really is it's.
So what are you going to do next? Another meeting with Dr. Allison. Obviously starting with this cost of those tests. I presume you'll look at that.
Just some action, really. We've made our case. They've had the same information that I sent you. So really, it's a very small amount of people, and we're all very sensible. We're all parents. We've all got our children's best wishes at heart. Why would we want to risk anything? So we can be trusted in the same way that I'm sure hospital transfers and, those sorts of households could be trusted to, be tested, to isolate sensibly. But it's just that, can you please help us with the cost of this? Because it's huge.
Well, do keep in touch with us about this, see if we can find, obviously, an end result for you on this. In the meantime, obviously, people that haven't heard of your group want to get in touch. How do they do it? Is it Facebook?
Yeah, so we're Parents Across the Water on Facebook. And it's, a sounding board for people experiencing the frustration. And also, people have had different responses from the borders control people. So people have been sort of comparing, how they've got on with dropping children off or having children collected, because it doesn't seem that there's a sort of a blanket response from them. Some people have had a greater success than others. So, yeah, it can be useful. Just a sounding board, a moan. And ideas about how to deal with children, the emotional impact and things like that. So yeah, they can find us on Facebook, and we'll keep updated of any progress as well, hopefully.